Most gold claim buyers make these same 10 mistakes. Watch to learn more.
Mark Holland, Holland Gold Mining Adventures. Welcome back. We're going to talk a little bit today about mining claims, buying mining claims. Should I buy a mining claim? There's a lot of pros and cons to this, and I want to be real honest about it. I have mining claims. I've sold mining claims, and so it'd be real easy for me to say absolutely everybody should buy a mining claim. But I want to just be realistic and talk about expectation. People come at mining claims with completely different, literally polar opposite goals. You'll have one person or individuals or couple that recreation is their main criteria. They want a place where it has good camping, a nice creek, some gold, maybe some fishing, and just a place that they can go to and get away, and the gold is a bonus to the overall experience. Other people could care less about camping. Matter of fact, they could care less about access. They want to get as far away from everybody else as they can. They want to stomp up through the brush and find a place that's been maybe just barely touched, and their entire goal is gold, and they don't care to have anybody around them. So people come at buying mining claims with completely different agendas. And so I just want to touch base on that, and depending, what your expectations are. Again, if the experience and camping out for the weekend and mining some gold with your grandkids, that's an easy one to achieve, and having a little gold to show in the vial that you give to your grandkids, if that's your expectations, that's easy. But for the guy that wants to go out and fill several 1-ounce vials of gold in a week period with minimal expense and a high banker, he's not going to be happy with that. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Bob, if you don't mind, your perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, but more than a decade ago, I think this is how you and I first got acquainted.
Yeah, it was actually. I was just thinking about that. I'm probably a great example of, should you buy a gold claim or not? And Mark set it up perfectly, is that you got to define what your expectations are. If you're going to think you're going to get hundreds of ounces of gold with a high banker or a stream sluice, well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, that ain't happening, because it's all about moving material. In my case, and I don't know if I told you this, Mark, but after I retired from the military, I went as a private security contractor overseas, and I was severely injured. And it took me, well over a year to recover. But during the recovery process, I wanted to go back to gold mining, because in previous years, it was always a hobby of mine since I was a young man. It was my driving force, so I was doing a lot of research while I was laid up in bed, recovering and doing all this other jazz. And however, some odd reason, I stumbled on Idaho, and then eventually I stumbled in a little town called Riggins, Idaho, and that's how I met Mark. And I think it's going on 11 years, 12 years.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, and I bought a claim from Mark, and it's up in a place called the Florence Mining District, up in the Clearwater Mountains, about 32 miles from Riggins. Very remote. Access is fairly easy. It just takes a while to get up there, but once you're up in the mining district, you really need to do your due diligence. And this kind of goes with no matter if you're in Idaho or any other state. Couple things I looked at. Number one is I wanted to find out how friendly the jurisdiction was with like the Forest Service and BLM. And then I was doing my research. Is there real gold there? Because all these places have been hit very hard. But with understanding the geology of this, and not only that, having someone take me up, and your nephew was kind enough to take me up, and we did some mining together, and we finally found out where the pay lay or what we were looking for. I'm also the great example of, if I only had one bigger piece of equipment, I'd get more gold. I started off with a small high banker, then I went to a bigger high banker, and then I'm like, man, I'm doing all right. I'm not going to quit my day job. We didn't have a day job back then because, I was kind of injured. This is a minor injury. But I ended up with a trommel and a backhoe. We were moving material. And
you're using the term backhoe pretty loosely there, Bob. What was that exactly?
You mean an excavator?
Well, I'm talking about the Briggs and Stratton that unit that you hauled behind your four-wheeler. That's the one I first remember.
The digger, yeah. And so the good part about having a mining claim, number one, you can't put a permanent structure on there, but you could stay on your mining claim for as long as you want. There is no forest term. What's the forest term limits? Was it like 14 days?
14-day camping limit, and after that you're required to move a significant distance, whatever significant is.
Right. So for my case, the claim that I bought is called Black Sand Creek. It had a road access, not the easiest to get. You had to do some road maintenance and getting back there, but it had year-round water, which is always critical. And again, goes back to what your expectations are. And not every mining district is created equal. And not every jurisdiction, Forest Service or BLM is created equal either. And this is all part of it, as I referred to earlier. But in my particular case, I wanted to do it so I could prove that, because I did want to get away. I'd spend weeks up there, I'd come back and bug mark for a couple of days, or basically a day, do my laundry, and then head back up in the mountains. And eventually, my son would come out. He was out there for a few seasons, and some of my military buddies would come up there. And I know you've met a few of them, the Georgias in particular. But guys want to come up, and from my standpoint, I'd bring some of my soldiers that were struggling with issues. And I think I referred to it as my oath of office doesn't have an expiration date, nor does it my duty to my soldiers. And to this day, I retired in 2009, so it's been a few years, but I'm still working with some of my soldiers. Matter of fact, I'll probably bring a few of them out again for you to be entertained with.
Lord help us. No, it's been a real pleasure. Actually, it's been a real pleasure to get to meet the gentlemen that you've had out, and they truly seem to enjoy going to the mountains, digging a hole and finding gold. So it's been good. Been good for us.
Yeah, no, I know you asked me, would I do it again? I would do it again. And, honestly, for me, it wasn't so much about finding the gold, even though, yes, I will be the first to admit is once I saw a little flake or two flakes, I'm like, oh, I can find more. And I know one time I was mining so much that when I came back home, when I went back to visit my friends back in the gym to work out, they were concerned about me because I'd lost so much weight. I think I lost 20 some odd pounds because I was shoveling that much. I'm not going to get into that. Maybe I may have had some equipment issues and some other things, but that's all part of mining. That's why I brought my son out. Mark and my son are very similar, very creative. They're out-of-the-box thinkers, and they can literally look at something and go, huh, okay. And I think that's actually, has the claim to the best example I could give is your product, the Gold Maker. And I told you umpteen times years ago, is like, I wish I had that on my claim. Would have saved me a lot of time because it was for me, it was a perfect sampling machine and on that. But I digress. But I know one of the biggest issues that you're going to have to look at is the jurisdiction. And I know maybe we should briefly talk about our interaction with Jeff and the terminology of significant disturbance.
So in all the years, we have mining up and down the Salmon River here, right in our back door at Riggins. You can't file a gold claim. It's protected. Not to get into all that story, but once you get out of the river corridor, one of our larger districts is Florence, and you can file mining claims there. And by the way, a lot of people don't tell you this. You can do your research and you can file a claim. You don't have to buy a claim. Again, a lot of people are going to tell you that when they're in the business of selling mining claims. The value is in the knowledge and the research that is done. It's very difficult to go into an area like Florence, which is heavily claimed, and especially the three big ones are access, water all season long, and gold. To find those three that's a quality claim in Florence. And to find that, and to find one that's not already been claimed, so you're not claiming over the top of somebody, it takes a lot of research. And it takes a lot of knowledge of the area. You might find access and water, but unless you can put hands on it and you're familiar with the area, there might not be any gold. And you can get 2 out of 3 pretty consistently, but to get all 3 requires some research. That's why people are willing to let somebody else do the research, somebody that knows, and pay for the claim. It does have the value. It is real property, by the way. It's willable, it's sellable. Bob, you bought a claim. Did you lose money, make money?
I pretty much broke even. I got into it, and
how many years?
Friends of mine.
How many years did you mine on your claim?
Oh my gosh, 10 years.
And
it was only recently that I stopped, and you and I started with your current venture there, and I did some dredging on the Salmon River with my son again. And I know you and I are looking at doing that this summer, but yeah, no, it was close to 10 years I was mining up in that area, and I learned a lot.
So you got gold, you got the gold for 10 years, and then you sold your claim. Did you make money, lose money?
I broke even on it. So to me, that's making money. I didn't lose money because I also treated also as a business because I did buy some things there. So I did I wrote off my equipment. Another thing people don't think about. But if you're going in, as Mark alluded to, you just want your family, just want an adventure. Keep it small, enjoy it. And have the kids shovel in while you're sitting back under an umbrella and watching them do some work for you. But again, it goes back to defining what you really want. And I think Mark explained that very well.
So you mentioned the different, the legalities of it. And so this is a little bit convoluted, for lack of a better word. Some mining districts are friendlier than others when it comes to miners. And we do live in a relatively friendly district. I'll say that Jeff, the gentleman that oversees the Forest Service part, which the Florence district is primarily Forest Service ground. Forest Service is in charge of the surface. The BLM is in charge of subsurface. And herein starts where it gets, because it literally, that's how it's written in the law. Forest Service is in charge of surface, BLM subsurface. There's no definition of where does one end and where does the other begin. So for years up there, if I'm cutting some brush or digging a hole, I had been, I'll call it harassed, questioned, harassed, threatened by somebody's going to write me a ticket. Kids that are much, much younger than me telling me that I can't dig a hole, even though I have a valid mining claim. And miners dig holes, just so that's what they do. But I was told at one point that if I even cut a piece of grass or a piece of brush, that in fact that's a significant surface violation. And at the same time, the state of Idaho says I can take a bulldozer on my mining claim and I can clear 5 acres. And after 5 acres, then I have to file a plan of operation, etc. So the definitions go from cutting a blade of grass to mowing down 5 acres with a bulldozer. And everybody is trying to interpret, and all these agencies are trying to keep each other happy. Some of them trying to keep the miners happy. Some of them don't care about the miners. And then they have to keep the environmental groups happy, or they'll get sued. And so there's this. We're fortunate we have a gentleman, Jeff, that he was trying to reach a balance. He was very logical. And so we came to an agreement. And he basically said, if you guys, I'm going to tell my kids that are enforcing the law, if you're digging manually, if it's picks, pans, hands, metal detectors, shovels, you're legal. And you can have a pump for your water. Not if you're using it to hydraulic mine, that's off the table. But if it means pump for water for your sluice box, you're golden. But when you start bringing mechanized equipment, that's a problem. And so me being me, I had to ask the question. And I said, so just so we're clear, Jeff, I'm pretty ambitious. And my buddy and I, we can go with our shovels. And in 1 or 2 days, we can mine a 10 by 10 hole, high banking, 3 feet deep. And so as long as we do it with shovels and picks and our hands, 10 by 10 by 3 feet, that's a legal hole. And he says, as long as you don't use mechanized, that hole is legal. And I said, well, I have a friend. Bob was sitting right next to me at the time. I said, he's got a little 8-horse Briggs & Stratton digger that he hauls behind his 4-wheeler. And he's an Army vet. And he was injured. He gets around great, by the way, get better than I do. But he was injured. And so that's a challenge for him to dig that hole. But he can dig that 10 by 10 hole 3 feet deep with his little excavator. So if he does that with his little digger, his 10 by 10 by 3 feet hole, his is illegal, but my 10 by 10 hole is legal. Is that correct? And Jeff, bless his heart, he's in the middle, caught in the middle, and he said, it's an imperfect system. Yes, his hole is illegal and your hole is legal, and we're going to leave it at that. And so this is what we've come to in this particular district. Other districts, God help you. God help you. Some of them, if you're in California, you're just out of luck, by the way. Oregon is a close second.
One thing I would say, too, to add into this, and Mark knows this well, is that if you're going to really do this, really understand the regulations, the laws behind it. As Mark knows, I'm well-versed in the 6 CFR, all the documentation that built upon that. And in fact, you will find the majority of these people, Forest Service, BLM, don't even understand the basics because they're in charge. But the good thing about it is we have a different administration and they're looking at increasing mining activity. But the one thing, if you have a disability, and I did ask Jeff this, and I don't think you were there, it was sometime after that, I said, okay, how do you deal with the American Disabilities Act in this? He did not have an answer, and that's a fact. You have to provide me access. Something to think about. But we'd never recommend doing anything illegal. There are some people that want to just hide in the back and tear up the land. That's just pretty irresponsible, and that ruins it for the rest of us. So, I would highly discourage that, because doing, especially as Mark knows, working with Jeff in the new Forest Service Administration, because the chief geologist is from Alaska, I think she kind of knows a little bit about mining. And and she's been very well, and during a plan of operation, it's not that big of a deal. It just takes a little.
Is there. Make sure that legally you can go after it. Are you going to run a high banker? Do you want to run a dredge? It's difficult in the Florence Mining District because all of those are tributaries of the Salmon River, and any tributary to the salmon is closed for dredging. So it's a good thing to know before you buy a claim and think you're going to put a 4 or 5 inch dredge in and go to work. And it goes on and on. Do your due diligence. If gold's your number one, make sure there's gold in paying quantities. Do a little research. If you're looking to buy from somebody, have them go dig with you. Have them show you the gold so that you won't be disappointed. At the same time, again, if you're looking for recreation, that's an easy one to achieve. There's some really nice mining claims with great access and great camping and good gold, so that when you do send your kids over there and they shovel in, you can put some gold in a vial and send them home with it, and they can show the gold that they got with mom and dad or grandma and grandpa or whatever it might be. Figure out what your expectations. And should you buy a mining claim? Absolutely, yes. Should you refinance your house so that you can afford to buy a mining claim, betting that you're going to pay for your claim and your groceries and your expenses all in the first season, which sometimes the seasons can be 3 months here because of the elevation and the snow. Should you bet the farm? No, absolutely not. I don't recommend you do that at all.
You mean like a couple out of Michigan you ran into last summer?
Ran into a couple. He was ready to quit his day job and buy a claim and go mining in Florence. And I did point out a few facts to him. That's about a 3 to 4 month season. You're going to have to make your entire living, which was in excess of $100,000 at his current job. You're going to have to make that in 3 or 4 months. And he had no mining experience, no background. And I told him I recommend you pump brakes and keep your job. Come out here in the summer, set up a high banker, learn about gold, learn where it is, learn if it is, and take a few baby steps before you go quit your job and sell the farm. There's a lot more stories of failure for people that have done that than success.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you how many miners I ran into over the 10 years I was up in Florence that had these unrealistic expectations, wouldn't listen to anybody, and then, you wouldn't see them next season or 2 seasons because they, again, had unrealistic expectations. They didn't do their due diligence. So I think at this point we should wrap her up, Mark. What do you think? What do you want to do for your next video?
Where are we going next, Bob? We've talked about a couple options.
I think
Find gold, baby.
I think we should talk about like fine gold recovery.
Yeah, fine gold. That's very common where we are, whether you're mining the salmon tributaries, the Florence Basin, the Warren District. Fine gold is a pretty common theme here. Yes, there are gold nuggets, and I have proven that, and others have as well. But fine gold is a common theme, something that you can get pretty consistently.
Okay, well let's wrap her up here, and I guess I'll see you next time, my friend.
Sounds good. We'll keep you posted.
Fine gold recovery in action. Like and subscribe for more. Don't miss our next video.